many of you have a dog at home or here on campus? Let me see the hands. Here's a little dog theology. Okay? It goes like this. You feed me, you pet me, you shelter me, you love me, you must be God. How many have a cat at home or on campus? Here's a little cat theology. It goes like this. You feed me, you pet me, you shelter me, you love me. I must be God. How many of you have a pet squirrel at home?
Only at Elon.
I actually don't have one anymore, but I did have a pet squirrel. Never inside. It was young, it fell out of a nest. I used to feed it with an eyedropper, and every time I came home from work, it would run down the tree and run up my leg and sit on my shoulder. His name was Frodo. He was my friend until it became too uncool to hang out with humans. And then he was gone. Anyway, Leonard Sweet talks about a third type of theology called squirrel theology. The way squirrels live their lives puts them on a different theological plane than dogs or cats. Living here at Elon, we know that. I watched a girl once feed a Mento to a squirrel right by the back of Mooney. He says, first, consider that squirrels are so good at what they do, they have generated a whole anti-squirrel industry. The manufacture of squirrel-proof bird feeders. If you've ever attempted to feed just the birds and not the squirrels from your backyard feeder, you know that no one has yet succeeded in creating a truly squirrel-proof feeder. Products designed to baffle don't baffle them for long. Weighted feeding slots don't get them discouraged. Squirrels aren't rocket scientists, though, but they use all their squirrely attributes to get to the prize. They dig in with their toes. They balance on precarious perches. They use their tails like anchors. They use their front paws like surgeons' skilled hands. The squirrel's tactics aren't necessarily perfect, but they are always persistent. All of the squirrel's antics are centered on a single-minded purpose. Food. And because of that single-minded purpose, they find joy in every moment, as though it were the only one that matters. That's squirrel theology. Focused. As we begin the season of Advent, we too are asked to be single-minded and focused on something way beyond food, I hope. And what we're focused on is the coming of Christ. Our scriptures and the season begs us to be attentive, to be prepared. And I don't know about you, but I personally am not 100% always prepared for the coming of Christ. How many of you have smoke alarms in your homes, or in your dorms, or suites, or apartments? We have smoke alarms. Families have smoke alarms because somehow that makes the parents feel very secure in their home. Oh, we have a smoke alarm in case of fire. But what guarantees that the smoke alarm is going to be effective every time? Anybody? A good battery. A battery. Many times in our home growing up, as my mother burned toast, the thing would go off and fanning it or take it down and remove the battery. It happened at my sister's home on Thanksgiving Day. She pulled the battery out. I pray she puts the battery back in. We sometimes feel but maybe it's time for us to check the battery on our smoke alarm. Maybe it's time to check the quality of our lives. A 4-week opportunity to look and do some introspection about the quality of our lives. I talked FaceTime with my 2 nephews in Connecticut on Thanksgiving Day, and my oldest nephew has a daughter, Shiloh. And me being the smart aleck priest, I said, hey, she's 5 years old. I said, hey, Shiloh, what does Advent mean? She looked at her father, she looked back at me at the screen, and she said, that's easy, Unc. It means just add event. I said, yeah. As I was driving away from my sister's house in Greenville, I started to think about that. And I said, this girl is brilliant. Add event. Wouldn't it be so easy if all the stuff that's inside of us that distracts us from noticing the appearance of God in our lives, the coming of God, that we could just lift up the top of our heads like a little air vent and let out those things that distract us, the anxieties of life, those things that lead us to carousing or drunkenness, to let it out of our lives. Those fears, those hatreds, those angers, jealousies, and resentments. Wouldn't it be so easy to vent them out of our lives if we could just do that? Not so easy, is it? If we could only do that. Talk about anger and frustration. I was driving back from Raleigh today, and I got a call from one of our alumni who was very, very distressed and upset. And she said, Father, I went to confession the other day, and the priest in confession told me that I was pathetic. He almost didn't want to give me absolution, but feared that I might be driving somewhere, and if I got hurt, he didn't want me to go to hell. And she started to sob. I apologized profusely for her approaching a priest who maybe had a bad day, or maybe something happened, and he was not kind and merciful. I said, please pray for that man, and if you feel so inclined to let me know the name so I can report that to the bishop, not to hurt him, but that so maybe he doesn't harm someone else. Advent. The name comes from the Latin advenere, to come to. And usually we think of the Advent season as Christ coming to us. At Christmas breaks into our lives at any given moment, and we have one of those Jesus Christ moments, or at the end of time when it happens. How about this season of Advent, this 2015, we turn it around? That Advent means that we come to Christ. We come to Christ. Spend more time in quiet prayer with Christ. Spend some time looking into your heart and finding out what are those things that I need to be reconciled about. There are penance services scheduled all throughout the diocese, and I can't guarantee that that priest that this girl talked about won't be present. I hope he won't be present, but at a penance service there's usually 6, 7, 8, 9, 10 priests. There are opportunities every week here on this campus, every Tuesday from 3:30 to 4:30. If you want to celebrate the sacrament, I'm in my office, no appointment necessary at Newman Lumen. But it might be a good idea to begin the season of Advent that way. I'm going to humbly acknowledge my sinfulness. If I could only put a vent on the top of my head and let it all out, I would. But I can't. To start simply and humbly acknowledge our sins. Pray that as we pray to approach God and come to God in our daily lives, we might resemble that figure that St. Paul talks about in the second reading, that person who is approaching holiness because of such a generous love. May that be our Advent prayer.